we just got back from our fab tour
Yeah.
at Intel 18A.
It was fab.
I thought it was okay.
No,
this is the coolest thing ever.
Dang it. All right. And full disclosure, Intel did pay for our room and board, travel, all that kind of stuff to come out for their Intel Tech Tour.
Yep.
But all the opinions are our own. This is, essentially information gathering material for Panther Lake, but then also to come out and see the 18A process. We're not going to get into the speeds and feeds and yields and all that kind of stuff. We just thought it'd be interesting to talk about experiences, because I've never been in a fab before.
I'd never been in a fab before.
I have been in one. Yes,
Yeah.
the Intel fab in Malaysia. So yeah, this was my second fab.
Oh, okay. Fabulous. Well,
It was.
I think, it all starts with the ride over. They put us on some buses.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they were like, hey, you have a scheduled time. And man, at least talking to the ladies, they were scheduling people back to back to back for,
Yeah, they
like
said
a
something
large portion of the day.
30 groups or something. Some enormous number of groups have been through nonstop for the last 3 days.
Yeah, and we were one of the last groups, so it was a well-oiled machine
It was.
at that point.
Yep.
They took us into the building, or actually,
Chandler, by the way.
oh, it's in Chandler, Arizona. They actually did a perimeter tour first.
Right.
There was a nice lady, kind of an Intel, I don't remember her name.
Communications person.
Yeah, communications lady. She gave us a guided tour from the bus, just around the perimeter, talking about all that kind of stuff. Some really interesting, notes from there.
You got a sense of the size of the outside of the building,
It
which
was
is large.
huge. Well, multiple buildings.
Yeah, multiple buildings.
Yeah.
You
It
get
was
a
700 acres. is
They
what
had
said.
talked about like water reclamation and things like that. Talked about power coming in and no trains. I asked about trains.
Yeah,
No trains.
mostly truck.
We went down streets called Transistor Terrace.
Ooh,
Yeah.
okay,
Yes,
I like
and I
that.
think there was a processor way. Or
that's
yeah.
fine.
So there was silicon something.
Yeah,
When
right.
you buy 700 acres and turn it into a multi-billion-dollar
You get
factory,
that
you get to
choice.
name it whatever you want.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
And this plant, whatever, this area has been open since, I think they bought it in the 70s.
But
right?
they broke ground in the 90s for the first fab.
Right,
year, she
and it's
said.
been
Yeah.
continually built since then.
Yeah, so 18A is just their newest thing. It's their latest process technology. So we were here specifically to see the buildings that were spun up from that. But first we had to go in, kind of get organized. They went through security. They told us that we need to leave all of our phones, all of our electronic devices, even my smart ring I had to leave behind.
Anything with RF basically had to stay
Right.
back for security and for to protect the sensitive electronic stuff inside.
We had badges. We were being watched at all moments.
Yeah, and yes, we went in. We got the safety briefing. We were told follow the person that works there. If something bad happened, nothing bad happened. We were fine.
So they split us up into even smaller groups. We were all together in the same group.
Yep.
We went in, and the process, they had told us ahead of time we were going to be putting on bunny suits.
Yeah.
But if you don't know what a bunny suit is, how would you describe a bunny suit?
Well, it's not like the guy that you put your kid on at Easter. It's like
Yeah.
a full head-to-toe covering, multiple layers in some cases, boots, gloves, goggles, beard and hairnets, shoe covers, and it's a multi-layered process. So we went through a security door first. They had to badge everybody through.
Yep.
And at that point, they put on beards and hairnets and foot coverings.
Yep.
And then we went into the gowning area, is what they called it. And I think normally if you work there, you just go in and you put your gown on. You know which size you wear. You grab it.
normal day.
They had
Yeah.
multiple sizes.
Right.
But
Yeah.
we walked up,
Yeah.
and they just sized us by eye
Yes,
and
it was
gave
like
us...
Salero.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I
You are-
really did feel like cattle.
It was like going to a good
through.
tailor. They look at you and you're like, oh,
that's
you're
right.
44 brag.
That's it.
Except
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
if we were all just lined up and it was Taylor.
Yeah.
We had individual people helping us, put on every piece in the correct order. So after we were all suited up, then we were presented with the people who actually work there and the tour guide. We did have PR with us, to help with questions on that, but mostly we were introduced to, and I don't remember, Bill Collier.
Bill Collier,
Bill Collier, who's a litho guy.
Yep.
So he's
That's
essentially like lithography, and like, what does that mean? He's kind of the guy working with the.
Yeah, he's overseeing the actual etching of the chips.
Okay.
Lithography.
Yeah. So and these were seasoned professionals.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said he'd been there for 30 some years.
Yeah. And gave us a little thing of like, hey, be safe. Watch your surroundings. Don't write and walk at the same time.
Right.
All that
We had a
kind
couple of
stuff.
times where people came through with big carts full of stuff that were like, clear the way, clear the way.
I mean, what we were in though was a clean room, and the idea that's why we were suited up so well, because we didn't want particles of skin or hair or anything of that sort floating in. And they told us it was Bill said it was a class 10 clean room, which I've done a little Googling, and apparently it comes out to the maximum number of particles with a diameter of 0.5 micrometers per cubic foot is 10.
Okay.
So
0.5 micrometers. So okay, wow, that's so half a micron wide, 10 per cubic foot.
Yeah. So there ain't no dust in there. Is basically what I'm saying.
That was nice.
Yeah.
Also, the ventilation system was interesting. They described how the air is coming in from the top and
goes
then
on the
blowing
bottom.
down, and like almost every surface we walked on had the like grill holes. So it was essentially like recycling the air.
Yep.
Like we couldn't feel it because we were in the full body suit.
You could feel it a little bit on your face.
Yeah. So
And those floor tiles all lift up too. That's the other thing. Like some of them had viewing ports in them.
Yep.
They had a couple places where they were pulling machines in and out. We weren't allowed to take video, obviously, inside this at all. But they had a couple places where they had like, the machines that we were able to see on our level often were poking through into the sub levels as well, where they were hooked up to the different chemical feeds and water and all the stuff that they need. And so they were pulling stuff in, putting new stuff out, and like the whole thing was constantly at work. We were in, just so folks know, 42 and 52
is what we went in, but also 62 does do some 18A process as well. So.
They're building that out.
But 52 is the one that is
18A.
just dedicated to 18A. So yeah, I mean, we saw a lot of machinery. I guess you had some questions with the tour guide about how this compares to Malaysia. Like how do you think?
So
it compares?
apparently, so it was interesting because I really thought that there was sort of a uniform way of doing all this. So in Malaysia they have fab, but also assembly and packaging as well, assembly and test. And in Malaysia they had a bunch of essentially autonomous carts. So they'd have wafers into these carts, and these would be wandering around the ground. They'd be playing a little tune just to make sure that you weren't running into them, but they would obviously...
Like at the restaurant.
Exactly, but they would autonomously navigate themselves.
Are they like golf cart size or smaller? Like
No,
like
I
a
would
big
say
cooler?
about the size, you and I, the size of you and I.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
maybe a little bit less. And they have just the racks of wafers, and these things would go and basically dock themselves, and the wafers would go. And again, what I remember is the little tune just monotonously playing over and over and over. But here, they now, I guess the new scheme is to basically just do it overhead. So they have these little, they looked relatively similar. These little, racks.
They look like caddies almost.
Exactly.
It was like a
right,
U-shape
exactly. That's a great
kind
way
of
to put it.
thing.
Caddies, and they were just going over on conveyor belts,
Like hundreds of them.
Yeah, hundreds. I mean,
just going to and from.
Yeah, and they had
around.
they were bar coded. So they apparently, I asked about RFID, which was kind of stupid because RFID would probably be a bad thing in a fab like that. But yes, they're bar coding, so everybody knew. You could identify which caddy was going where, and yeah, there was.
And they were hauling wafers.
Well, so
we saw the actual I don't know, the carrying case that had wafers.
So the carrying cases are called FOUPs.
FOUPs.
FOUPs. I don't remember what it stands for, unfortunately.
I don't. Yeah.
But I was gonna say that was the defining. My first impression walking into the clean room area, out of the gowning area, was, oh my God, there's all these things moving above us all the time.
Yeah, that's right.
Because
Exactly.
there's a ton of tracks.
Yeah.
There's a ton of FOUPs riding in the caddies on the tracks. They're going pretty fast. It looked like 15, 20, 25 miles an hour. And I talked to Bill about it. So it was like, when you guys go home, is this like the flight traffic controllers who go home and play flight sims? Are you guys playing Factorio and like building these big buses to deliver stuff? He's like, he laughed. He was like, some people here definitely are into that. It's all about making sure that these incredibly expensive machines don't ever sit idle for longer than they need to,
right, yeah.
between, aside from like scheduled maintenance or preventative maintenance and stuff like that. So they have the FOUPs and the systems are designed to take the things out of one machine. Like they can load and unload automatically, which is I think different from Malaysia, right?
Yeah, right. Malaysia was done automatically, but it was just a little bit more sophisticated here.
Okay.
Well, and they had a process where the thing would come up via cable, and then come down, like kind of thing. So
it would stop above a machine and lower the FOUP
which
down.
was a pretty far distance.
Like
15, 20
meters,
those things were way over our head. So
Yeah, but they'd hit it precisely. They'd dock onto the thing, and then the FOUP would get turned around, and we saw one machine loading and unloading wafers.
Right. Yeah, I only saw one wafer actually there. Just maneuvering a wafer. Everything was very up high and abstract and so forth. There was just that one I'm not entirely certain what the machine was doing necessarily, but there was wafers, and the wafer was being moved, and the wafer was being processed, and the wafer was being moved back.
Yeah.
Incidentally, they were, I guess, considering asking everybody. Well, they were considering actually putting labels or putting tape over the actual brands of the machines that we're seeing here, and they decided not to. So they simply just asked us not to report on it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, some of the machines actually had markings on them with animals. I did see
They
a
did.
cat machine.
yes, they
That
had,
was very
they had a
cute.
gorilla.
Yeah. So
It was, and that, do you know why that? Did you hear what he said? Why that was?
I
Somebody
didn't hear
asked.
him.
No.
So it's really neat. It's like parking at Disneyland. So you know that the gorilla, if you say, "Hey, I need to work on gorilla," and you're on the subfloor, you can communicate really easily where you need to be on
Nice.
machine to machine.
That's cool.
So you don't have to, because he said the navigation underneath is very different than navigation above, so it's kind of hard to know where you are sometimes.
I can imagine. I mean, like, yeah, we were on the main floor, I guess, and yeah, they kept saying like, hey, there's subfloors down below, especially when we got to 52 with the EUV machine, the big expensive machine that is going to actually etch out the wafers and things like
the
that.
tiniest
Yeah.
circuits we've ever seen.
Yeah, it was a very large machine, but it was nondescript. And then they were like, "Oh, but this is also just the top. There's way more that you're not seeing."
75% more underneath, I think he
Yeah,
said.
yeah. And you said you felt
nice
like it
one.
was kind of smaller than you expected.
Well, so I was expecting, because I think they described it as the size of school, in terms of school bus size. And part of it is that the room that it's in is so enormous that you don't have a good sense of how far away you are from things. And you kind of got lost in like scale of the whole thing. Because the Fab 52 was like, I mean, it was long
was huge.
and wide. Yeah, really enormous. We walked into 42, I was like, oh, this is a really big room. And then 52 was another scale larger than 42. I was going to say an order of magnitude. Absolutely was not an order of magnitude bigger, but it was a lot bigger. It's also worth mentioning, this is a place where they bring wafers in and they send wafers out. They don't cut the chips. They don't do packaging here. They're not turning boules into ingots into boules and boules into wafers. That all happens elsewhere.
Which bummed me out. I thought we were going to see that. I didn't realize
yeah.
that this is literally just wafer in, wafer out of the whole facility.
Yeah, well, the assembly. They told me the assembly and packaging takes place also in Chandler, but it's a couple of miles away.
It's in a different place.
Yeah, and they wouldn't. And I asked the question, well, how does it get from point A to point B? And they wouldn't tell me.
They just fling them like frisbees, right?
That
They have
could
a
be.
giant
I think they
catapult.
have
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
like tunnels. Intel built tunnels.
I was like, it could be. I mean, that seems like it would be the obvious thing. I
Hyperloop.
wouldn't want to have high volume, high value wafers and going from point A to point B across city streets. It just seems like a heist movie, a lot of heist movie.
But I mean, what are you going to do with them, right?
I don't know.
I
hold on,
want
hostage?
one.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Hostage,
I would
guess.
take one.
Yeah. A couple of other things. Can we talk about like the copper?
Yeah, no, that was interesting.
Yeah, so there's segregation there. They basically they have this. Most of every machine that we saw had some sort of label that said no copper on it, and the idea being that copper was going to be destructive to the process early on in the lithography process. There was, interestingly enough, there was a process for moving products or moving machines that handle copper. So we saw specific, like I guess like a loading dock or something of that sort. But they also had everyone there was wearing white bunny suits. But if you saw someone in an orange bunny suit, that designated the presence of copper. So I don't know if you were supposed to stay out of the way or not. But
that person deals with
that
no
person
no
deals
fist
with
bumps
yeah,
for
no
those
fist bumps,
people.
exactly.
No fist
Yeah. So
bumps.
copper is considered essentially a contaminant in that context.
Yeah,
So,
they said it'll contaminate the wafer,
Exactly.
and it'll like actually spread and stuff like that. So it was serious.
And-
there were no copper signs ever.
And some machines were explicitly labeled copper OK too.
Right.
Yeah. Speaking computers, we're not talking about the actual machines, that are running the big processes. We're talking about like there were PCs in there with
a lot of
keyboards,
PCs.
Oh, yeah.
mice, like real
ordinary
old
Kensington,
4x3
keyboards.
LCD screens.
Yeah.
But a couple of them, like we saw, like it was running like Windows 98. Like,
Yeah, I saw a couple of Windows
real
98. I definitely saw a Windows 7 era circular start button.
Yep.
I assume like this is the thing we always say this when we're talking about why Windows getting end of life is bad. It's because in industrial uses there are machines that have the software, the dongle that makes the software work is probably key to work with Windows 98.
Yeah, somebody wrote that program.
Yeah, they're using a bunch of Pentium 60s.
And they have to continue
Yeah.
to use that.
And
till
they
the
will
end of
continue to
time.
use it apparently.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was really interesting. You think like, oh my goodness, this is one of the most advanced, fabs in the whole world. This is going to be crazy. They're using cutting edge technology
Your brain,
and running Windows 98.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny.
Well, and just to be clear, so the machines that are here range in price, but they go up to as large as like $500 million is the reported price for those EUV machines, which is like. It's not and it's not like they just have one of them. They wouldn't tell us how many they have.
Right.
They said they had at least one.
We saw one, and there were 2 spots on the ground that were exactly the same shape as that one between us and that one. So,
Yeah, well, they're still building it out. They've made that clear too. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we walked into the lobby, and in fact, they were just like, "Hey, don't touch the walls," because I guess the implication is that they're just still being painted. Yeah. I mean, it's literally still being built.
Yeah,
out.
I don't know if you noticed, but the second and third floors in that open atrium we walked into were all
Very
like walled
temporary.
off.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So speaking of photography, though, we also had some yellow light too overhead too, because I mean, it wasn't just normal light. We had yellow light. Apparently the idea being that. The light was specifically filtered because in case it happened to leak into one of the machines, anything that was not
300 nanometers is the cutoff.
Yeah, exactly right. So anything be above that, I guess, would be
or below.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think the filter
lower
was
would be more energetic, but it was yellow light, so I assume it was.
It was
higher.
under 300 millimeters that was filtered out.
Nanometers. Yeah.
Nanometers. Sorry, you're right. So, anyways. Yeah, so we had certain places where we had that light sort of overhead, which kind of gave everything a little bit of an odd feel. It was kind of like the opposite of blue light, right? In a way.
Yeah,
I mean, it felt like a yellow, like
wearing
a blue light
Oakleys or
filter.
something,
Yeah,
yeah.
right, exactly.
Wait,
So-
somebody asked if you got how long it took to get used to that kind of being that kind of light for 8 hours a day.
Right.
And he said it was a minute on that one. The new yellow, he said it was a different color in the 2 different fabs too. The 42 was a little more green, and the 52 was definitely more yellow.
Didn't seem like any eye strain or anything of that sort. The blue light would be harsher in your eyes.
I assumed that somewhere in there's Kryptonians and they're just juicing them up.
That could be.
Right?
That could be. That's right. Exactly.
I mean, honestly though, like, I was surprised by how many people were there. Like obviously they're still doing construction, but I mean they are producing.
It's full
it is fully
production
operational. Now. I've never been anything like this, so I just assumed so much of it is like fully automated, and I mean a lot of it was automated, but there were still hundreds and hundreds of people just scurrying around doing all sorts of stuff, from construction to, like people looking at wayfinders. I'm just kidding, they weren't doing that kind of thing, but
And there's people with there's people with hard hats and like safety gear that they can climb up on top of things. There's people in just like normal bunny suits like we were wearing. There's people in the copper crew.
I mean, the idea, and they sort of intimated that, is that you are here for a good portion of the day, so you want to go ahead and provide all of the creature comforts and all the necessities that you have, so you're not going off site or anything of that sort. Which is why, even though we didn't see it, they had, I think, definitely a cafeteria.
Oh yeah, I think they had like 5
said 4 or 5,
cafeterias,
yeah, right,
and one of
exactly,
them literally operates 24/7 because they're
That's it.
operating 24/7.
Yeah, well, the construction workers are there all the time, so yeah. So.
Also, if you had to go to the bathroom, I did ask about this. You have to completely de-bunny suit,
of course.
go to the bathroom,
Yep.
and completely re-bunny suit.
Yep.
There's no
Yep.
catheter or just move it to the side kind of thing. It was like, man, and that's a process.
I feel like the bunny suit on and off, if you did it every day, you'd be down to like 5 minutes by the end of it.
Yeah, probably. But
It wasn't that
I don't know.
intrusive.
Yeah, it depends on how often you're peeing, I guess.
On that front, they did have water on the floor. So I didn't seem to be bringing in like their Stanley tumblers or
You saw
anything.
water on the floor.
There were Culligan water machines.
You
about
mean
every
like drink?
200
Yeah,
feet.
okay,
Like,
sorry. I thought you meant water on the ground.
It wasn't. They were less concerned. It seemed like a lot of the people that worked there had their noses out. Like they weren't.
Yeah, right.
They were.
I
They
noticed that too.
talked about exhalation. He was like, "We'd much
Right.
rather have you breathing comfortably and not because it did get warm inside the suits. They didn't want people, falling over from heat exhaustion and stuff like that inside the suits." And there's water there too, which I was kind of surprised by. I expected it to be I wouldn't have been surprised if they said, "Hey, you got to do full face, the whole thing." But as Bill said, the FOOPs are sealed, so they're just trying to avoid, they're trying to keep the contamination level low to the point that I think he said was 10x cleaner than a hospital operating room is required to be or something like
well,
that.
and the ventilation, it probably does so much of that work.
Yeah.
It was loud.
Yeah.
It wasn't very loud. Yeah.
It wasn't as loud as like a car factory or something like that that I've been in
no,
before, but it
no.
was definitely a
Yeah, it
loud.
wasn't like
louder.
And inside the machines it's even more strict. I mean, it's
Yeah.
even more. Yeah, it's a class 1 clean room or class 1
Yeah.
strings. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny that everything everything was so clearly labeled. Like,
yeah.
hey, this is a confined area, entries by permit only.
Right.
This is level 0 vacuum. This is a level 3 vacuum. This is a level X vacuum. There's corrosive materials on this machine. There's not, everything. Like, I could have spent a week just walking around taking photos of warning signs, and
all the
And
because they were.
you spent weeks in a security cell.
I mean, look,
More
I,
than
Mystery Intel would have uninvited me from future visits. But yeah, it was really cool.
It was an interesting tour. I've never been on one of them before. I mean, like, now that you've been on two,
Sure.
like, were there things you expected to see that you didn't see, or things
I was
you
surprised
didn't
with
expect?
I was surprised with the overhead
Of the
conveyors. I
overhead,
just
okay.
thought that I thought that this is sort of the way it's done, and apparently now there's sort of almost like a Gen 1, Gen 2 way of handling things, and I thought, I hadn't seen that before. So I'm not sure if other fabs what approaches other fabs take, but
I mean, maybe some of the other buildings in that area,
possibly,
were
yeah,
on
or
the
you know,
system too,
again, yeah.
I was going to say, they said that the FOOP caddies can go to all the fabs. All the fabs are connected with clean area,
Right.
so you can walk from one to the other. You
said-
have to go through certain ones.
They said
Yeah.
the track is 30 miles that
Yeah.
connects everything.
And the funny thing for me, like, I love a factory game, and often those factory games, they design those machines so that, like, you have some ins on one side and outs on another. And everything I saw here was that they're all using the same bus for ins and outs. It's just that the caddies are tracked and they know which ones go where. And Bill was saying it toward the end of the tour, we were talking about the storage buffers that they have near the machines. Because like I said earlier, the goal is for these incredibly expensive machines to never sit idle. So they have, it's not just thinking about the uptime for the machines, they also have goals for how many FOOPs full of wafers are sitting in buffers near the expensive machines, and so that the caddies can come in and get them, bring them in, bring them out as quickly as possible.
And that's 24/7, even through
Yeah.
Christmas.
Yeah.
I mean, they never stop.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They also wouldn't tell us, of course, anything about output
No.
yields, anything about sort of all the stuff that people really want to know. They're not going to tell us.
Right.
They didn't give us wafers at the end, so I assume yields are good enough that they're not just, hey, here you have you got a wafer, you get a wafer, you get a wafer.
Maybe Ian got one. I don't know.
I mean, probably.
Yeah, we'll see.
yeah.
But there's still so much more to know about Panther Lake. This is just kind of one of the unveiling points along the way. They did say, hey, CES is where you're going to start to see product announced and come out. You have great articles up on PCWorld.com if you want to go read all the speeds and feeds and all the information kind of stuff. So, yeah, this was just kind of covering our experiences of it. And
I mean, you don't often get to go inside one of the most advanced factories in the world, right? I think Intel, they made it very clear standing on the stage, they're like, we feel like this is the most advanced fab in the world right now. I'm not enough of an expert to know whether, where we land on that, but I've never been in anything that was like, it's incredible to see technology applied at this kind of scale. And it was very cool.
It's wild.
Yeah.
So thanks again for watching, and yeah, go read articles over on PCWorld.com. Subscribe here for the testing that will inevitably come
Yes.
for Panther
Exactly.
Lake, and we'll catch you in the next video.